Camera angle. Okay. Well, thank you all for joining. Um, we've got this lovely pair from Mitchell. I must say, having not seen these in person before until today, really impressed with the quality. The leather feels really nice, and then the finishing is really, really solid. Which I know all of y'all know that because all of you have a pair already. Um, but what we're going to be going through is just kind of all the basics, and then also going into, I mean, the basics are really easy, and I'll kind of just blow through that unless y'all have questions about it. But mainly focusing on my technique for doing mirror shines, because I think that's the thing that a lot of guys think takes forever. And with a little bit of practice and the right technique, it really does not have to take that long. I know I've seen some people talk about like, oh, it takes hours and hours. Well, I'll show you how you can get a pretty decent mirror shine in about 15, 20 minutes. So we'll spend some time on that. And then if you have any questions about any kind of shoe care related stuff, whether it's calf leather, suede, boots, whatever, happy to answer all that at the end. But kind of to begin, what we're going to use is the Saphir Renovateur, which is just a really good all-around conditioner. There's certain shoes I don't like to use it on, particularly certain patinaed shoes. I've found if the finish isn't well applied, and it's not like an alcohol-based leather dye, then there can be issues with the finish, like smudging. Um, and in that case, I would use the Napa leather balm, which I've found to be more delicate, and then it also doesn't have, it's not as oily, and it doesn't have any solvents to it. So I apply everything by hand. I don't use any like daubers or things like that. I've just found that like getting that heat between your fingers and the leather helps kind of work it in. And also it helps you control how much you're applying, because with any of these products, you really don't need that much. Like when I'm applying it, it's, a pretty small amount you're working into the leather. And the same goes for most products. And if you find that your shoes are really dehydrated, it's better to do multiple small layers and kind of apply and let it dry and brush it off and repeat versus trying to soak it all in one go. Just kind of working this into the shoe, just small circular motions.
Caleb, I'm going to jump in really quick. So you were saying that you like to use your hands to apply. Is that the cream polish as well, the pigmented polish?
Yep, pretty much everything. I mean, even the wax.
Oh, wow. Okay. So the reason I ask is because, the last thing I want is nail polish, listen to me, shoe polish under my nails, or, staining my fingers. I mean, if it adds pigment to leather shoes, which is, a skin, won't it do the same for our hands?
Great question. I have found that it's pretty easy to get out, just with some Dawn dish soap and a little bit of friction. I'll grab like a rag or something and just like, get soap and kind of like scrub your fingers. It really is. I found as long as my nails are trimmed and I've just washed my hands well afterwards, there's no residue and there's no smell. So I've found that you can get that out pretty easily, especially because with Saphir, it's all natural. There's not like a bunch of added chemicals. If you're using like kiwi or something that has a lot of chemicals in it, then you might not want to be messing with that on your fingers. But since it's, all natural, I'm not particularly worried about it. So now we're gonna let it dry a little bit. Just because usually about 3 to 5 minutes is good, just so it has enough time to soak in, and then also let the surface kind of waxes dry. Since there's not a lot of waxes, they dry relatively quickly. Yeah. And then as far as brushes go, there's a lot of different options. You can never go wrong with a just a horsehair brush like this. You don't need to go overkill. This one's like a really large brush, which is nice just because you get more kind of surface area. But they're also more expensive. And Kirby has not given me an affiliate link yet. So um, the other one would be a pig bristle brush. These are nice for grained leather because they have a much more stiff bristle over horsehair. So those kind of stiffer bristles can work their way into the nooks and crannies of a grained leather. I've also found that a pig bristle brush works as an excellent suede brush over the smaller little like brass bristle suede brushes because it's stiff enough that you can kind of like brush the nap on suede and it works pretty well. You can use pig skin on calf leather. I've just found that horsehair generally works a little bit better. So look at some little brush action.
So I personally don't have some of the Renovateur or the conditioning. So I'm waiting until we get to the pigmented shoe polish to jump in.
Yeah. No, Renovateur is great. It's something that you don't need to do necessarily every time you do your shoes. With the mink oil that's in there, it's pretty strong stuff. So if you are just kind of doing like, you're kind of every other week conditioning, you don't necessarily need to do that. Your cream polish is kind of enough to keep it hydrated. And then maybe that's once, depending on how much you're wearing the shoes, maybe once every other month is probably good enough for the Renovateur. So, like with these new ones, it's largely unnecessary. Um, I know some people would even say it's like bad to do to new shoes. I don't have that strong of an opinion on that. I know Mr. Justin Fitzpatrick says don't condition new shoes, but also a lot. The counter argument to his thing, which is like, oh, it's brand new, it just came out of the factory, it doesn't need conditioner. Depending on what shoe brand it is, obviously with these, that's a good point. But with a lot of shoe brands having sold shoes at different stores before, a lot of those shoes are sitting on the shelf for months, not receiving any kind of conditioning, and definitely could use a little bit. So moving on to the pigmented cream, and just like with the Renovateur, we don't need that much. So we just have a little dab here. One thing to note, and this is like one of those kind of rookie mistakes, it's not as big of a deal on black shoes, but it's really important on light brown shoes not to do the thing where you dab the product on and then work it in, because if you dab it on, all those oils will soak in pretty quickly. And if you leave that little dab on there, you'll have a little mark. And oftentimes it'll take a long time for that little mark to dry. So you'll have little spots. And I've seen it a lot of times, especially when I worked at Kirby, people would email me going like, hey, I bought, shoe polish and I applied it and I have little spots. And I'm like, well, I know what you did that caused that. So don't do that. Just apply and immediately work it in.
Quick question, if I might. If we have one of these things and we want to use this instead of the finger, what is the best way to wrap this around your finger so that you don't have to fight with it all the time, or have it
Yeah,
slip around or whatnot? I'll go through here if you want to walk me through.
I will. Hold on. Let me finish rubbing this in and I'll grab my chamois.
This
The
is
best
just
way
a
is to kind of
white
create a
cotton
knot.
t-shirt I cut
I
into a
would
long strip. That's
I
what
would
this
cut
is.
that in half
Cut
or
this in half.
into thirds, honestly, because it's pretty long, so it's gonna be hard to wrap in a nice way around your fingers. Like this one is probably, I think it's right around 18 inches if I remember correctly.
Okay.
But what I would do is you take two fingers and you do a little wrap, and then you put your finger here, wrap around again. So then you have this loop, and then you pull it through that loop. I'm trying to think of how to show that. Put through that loop, and then you pull, and then that's that. You have this nice surface that you can apply, product with, and it's smooth. So you don't have any like kind of wrinkles in there, because when you have wrinkles on your chamois and you're trying to apply product, it can kind of create ripples on the shoe, which you don't want. And then that way you can just hold this like this. Everything stays nice and tidy and out of your way. So that's what I would
Cool.
do
Thank you,
with
sir.
that. Yeah. Let's see here. Just working it in, applying a good amount of pressure as well. Like you'll feel your fingers start to heat up as you're doing it. And I think it helps, really let those nutrients from the product kind of penetrate into the leather.
With Saphir, I've always heard less is more. So
Correct.
can you go into that a little bit with this particular product? Because it's not necessarily the same for all products, but Saphir in general.
Yeah, I would actually say that applies to any shoe product I've found, because I've used other shoe products besides Saphir, and because I've also seen what happens when you apply way too much. Like when people decide their shoes are cracked and old, and they're going to apply like just ton of Renovateur or a ton of cream polish, and it really just gets the leather very sticky. And it also becomes very hard to shine it when you have just a sticky residue from the mink oil, or worse, when someone takes the pure mink oil that Saphir sells and like apply it to the whole shoe. You have to really strip it down after that, because it's pretty much impossible to shine over that much oil. It's enough oil that the U.S. government wants to invade your shoe, but not quite, but almost there. Um, so at that point, you'd have to probably take like alcohol to your shoe to kind of get all that oil off. Um, but when you apply just small amounts, because you can always add more later. But if you apply a little bit at a time and you have just enough to coat the shoe in a thin layer, it'll dry quicker and it won't leave as a residue. So that's kind of the best way to do it. And I found that for pretty much any product. Now with wax, even though we're going to end up applying a lot of wax to the shoe, we're doing it in lots of small layers. We're not taking a bunch of wax at one time and trying to cake it on. It's lots of small layers trying to build up layers that are going to produce that high shine. So now that we've let this dry a little bit, we're going to buff it.
Now I know we're doing this for tonight, but if we were doing our own shoes, would you say apply, let it sit, apply to the second shoe, let that one
Yeah,
sit while you brush the first?
exactly. That's the best way to do it, because that kind of speeds things up. And then when I have a lot of shoes, especially a lot of shoes of similar color, you can just have like an assembly line set up, like have all your shoes lined up, because you're going to apply Renovateur to all of them. You just apply Renovateur, go down the line, and then by the time you get back to the first one, it's dry, and then you can kind of brush down the line. Um, the most nifty way to do it if you have a lot. But if you're only doing one shoe, just apply to one, apply to the next one, and by the time you get back to the first one, you're pretty solid. So with the cream polish, you'll get just a light glow, um, kind of like a shoe fresh out of the box, which is kind of where we started. So it doesn't look really any significantly shinier than the starting point. If your shoe is already kind of worn, it'll actually produce quite a bit of difference. But for a shoe out of the box like this, not so much. So now we're going to get on to the fun part, or to me, the fun part, which is mirror shining, which I have tried a lot of different methods over the years, and I've found this to be the most effective. And I think actually using a timer can be helpful. What I do is about 5 to 7 minutes of just applying wax. Um, and then at that point, then you kind of switch to using water and a cloth to kind of build up that shine. So this, I'll just kind of show you. So we're gonna get some wax, and I'm gonna do a mirror shine on um, the toe and the heel. So what we're doing is small circles. And what we're trying to do with the wax is kind of fill all the pores of the leather, because it's when you're building a mirror shine, you need those pores to be completely filled. And you'll notice on kind of a poorly done mirror shine, usually right along the toe cap crease, that there's little spots, which means they didn't kind of put enough wax in those initial layers to kind of fill it all up. And it's hard, even if you have a good mirror shine, it's once those layers are built up, those kind of layers you missed are hard to fill in, and you'll see little spots. So being kind of careful with those initial layers is important. So what I do is circles, and then I go side to side and then front to back with applying the wax. And I found that that kind of hits all the different angles of the pores to really get the most coverage. There's probably like a way someone could scientifically break down why or why not certain techniques work the way they do.
That'll certainly be a discussion for the future. Which
That
way
would.
and why does it work?
Yeah, I'm sure someone will do that in like a YouTube essay one day, but that person's not going to be me.
David, there's some good content to take the Gentleman's Gazette. So I'm going to ask another question. I'm here going along. I've got my brown tap toes here.
Uh huh.
And I've always had the habit of kind of floating the shoe in the air as I brush and just kind of turning the shoe and changing my brush strokes for the different areas of the shoe. For instance, the toe cap, I normally go sideways and then I'll change to back and front, whereas the vamp, I'll kind of, go across it and then up the throat, and the quarters, I'll go back and forth on. The heel, I'll kind of flip it over and approach it this way. Um,
Sure.
how do you find it works for you? And is there any method that you would recommend over another?
With brushing, not really. I think if you find a way to just make sure you get all the residue off of the cream polish in your conditioner, that works. Like what you did seemed like a good and thorough method. Um, to me, there's certain things that are like there's a right way and a wrong way, and there's certain things that are not, and that's not one of them. To me, it's like there's a lot of ways you could approach that and it would work well. So I'm like, that looks like a good method. For me, when I shine shoes, I'm typically standing, just because I don't like sitting. Like right now, I actually switched to standing because trying to do this while sitting is kind of tricky for me, especially because I'm trying to keep it in front of the camera. Um, and then when you're going to the heel, what you want to do, or what I've, it's funny. I was talking to someone who was asking me for kind of shoe shining advice, and they're like, "Why don't I just mirror shine the whole shoe?" Which the answer is pretty obvious that if you're trying to put a bunch of wax right here, it's going to crack. Or if you put it, too much along the eyelets, it's going to crack because those areas have flexing happening. Um, but to me, with a mirror shine, it's kind of about bringing out the beauty and shape of the shoe. So obviously you're mirror shining the toe cap, which is part of the beauty. I like to do a little bit of wax right here along the welt on the side. And I found that if you don't do too much, it won't crack. And then on the heel, I kind of swoop up this side. I don't, even though this whole area is largely countered, like you could go up until this line right here, because that's kind of where the hard countering stops. I don't want to go all the way up here because I feel like having a block of mirror shine like that is just too much. So I try to have it kind of flow up from the heaviest level of mirror shine kind of in this back quarter and then have it fade up. So it's kind of with the wax, you're almost kind of painting, is how I think of it. You're kind of painting where you want the mirror shine to be. Because you can put wax over the whole shoe and you can mirror shine the whole shoe. But to me, that's not bringing out the beauty of the shoe, especially not in a wearable way. Like same deal on this side. Like we're kind of cutting up this side right here, but then kind of leaving this alone, mostly because the countering kind of, you can even see it with this wrinkle right here. There's no countering right there. You don't really want to put too much wax there. We're going to put wax everywhere a little bit, but you don't want too much. Because a little bit of wax is good because it provides a little bit of a minimal amount of water resistance, which is nice because of those waxes. But another thing you can do, which I think really elevates your mirror shine, is actually hitting the toe, sorry, not the toe, the heel itself. Because that's also leather, you can get a really pretty nice mirror shine going on the heel.
Caleb, quick question. So we talked about earlier applying layers of wax.
Yes.
And when you say that, so I've got my wax here, got my shoe here. I've been taking my finger, drawing it across the wax. It puts a little bit on there, a little bit I can feel on there. And I kind of go here. So when you say applying a layer, does that mean now coming back across the wax and going right back on top of what I just did? And if so,
Yes.
do I need to let that set first?
No. And also it's going to be, I'll say this, trying to float it in the air is going to be hard to get the right amount of pressure because you do want to be kind of working it in, because it's not like, see like this, like that's not going to really do much if you're just kind of wiping it across. But when you're applying the wax, you really want to kind of work it in with some pressure. You want to feel the heat and kind of like you're working it into the leather versus trying to just kind of glaze it on top. Putting a little bit of muscle into it. But you can also start to feel that you're getting the right level of wax because you aren't going to be feeling the pores of the leather anymore. Because normally, even on a calfskin, you can feel that texture of the pores, especially because this is, full grain calf. But eventually, you'll just start feeling wax and you won't feel any texture besides wax. And that's how you know it's almost to the point where you need to switch to your chamois to buff.
If anyone else has any questions along the way, I'm kind of monopolizing all the questions here. But jump in anytime, guys. Just unmute or raise your hand if you want to jump in first, and then just unmute and ask away.
How long would you say does a mirror shine last?
That all depends on where, like how much you're wearing them, because a mirror shine will last forever if you're not wearing it. But I mean, it only takes one rough day for your mirror shine to be toast. It's kind of, I would say a mirror shine is like dry cleaning. It's, if you're, out on a rough day, it's going to need dry cleaning immediately after that. But if you wear it for an hour or two out to dinner, you probably don't need much, but to hit it with a little extra layer of wax later to kind of refresh it. And it's funny, I had a lot of people when I was doing more mail-in shoe shines back when I worked for Kirby, where they'd be like, "Oh, I wore it and the mirror shines, the mirror shine wore off." It's like, well, yeah, you gotta. It's a continual thing. That mirror shine's not gonna last forever. In fact, it won't last for long if you are kind of kicking around the city, doing whatever. Um, so I would say, well, we'll get into actually how to revive a mirror shine, and I'll grab a pair of shoes I have that are, because I think that's an important thing as well, because there is kind of simple ways to do it, um, especially in a time crunch. Like if your shoe has some of those layers of wax already built up on them, it's fairly easy to take a little additional wax and revive it. It won't look perfect like when you started, but it will definitely be serviceable for, going to work or whatever you're doing.
And if I can piggyback on my own question, is there
Yeah.
too much of a mirror shine you could do? Like let's say you're really passionate about your mirror shine, and like looking at yourself through your feet, as like super polished. Would you say that it could damage the shooters? Like too much you could do? Like every week is too much. Let's say you wear your shoe every damn day.
Yeah, I get. I think I get what you mean. I don't
Yeah.
think you're going to damage the shoe. I think to a certain degree you'll have to take off the wax, and kind of restart, because you can only kind of keep building up and building up layers, especially if it's on the toe cap primarily, which is primarily where the mirror shine lives. You're fine. I think it's when people try to put too much wax on the soft areas of the shoe that can lead to damage, because you're adding, something that's not supposed to be there, and that's creating friction on the leather, which can lead to like cracking, which we obviously do not want. So I think we're actually pretty close to. I think we'll call it there. So now we've applied our wax, and I wish I had better lighting, but I couldn't find my ring light. But you see, we've got all these little layers of wax, and you can see the little smudgies there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take our chamois, find a clean spot, and we're going to wrap it around, do our little loop, and go through like this. Now, this, more than ever, it's really important to make sure your chamois is smooth. You do not want any wrinkles. You want it tight. And thankfully, with the way we do this loop, if it gets loose, you can just pull it, it comes tight again. Now,
Hello?
Now we're going to take a little bit. Yes.
Hey, can you
That was
guys
a
hear me?
question.
Oh,
Huh?
no,
Yeah, we can hear.
I'm sorry. This is Yakub. Yeah, I actually have to hop off right now. But Mitch, thanks a lot for setting this up. Caleb, was a pleasure to meet you finally.
Yeah, man.
Definitely enjoyed this tutorial, or this I guess you could say this refinement session for those of us who've been doing this for a while. And yeah, I look forward to the next one.
Heck yeah. Absolutely, man.
So much for joining, Yak. Have a great one, man. We'll see each other soon.
Absolutely. All right. Have a great evening, everyone.
Take care.
Peace out, man.
All right. Bye.
I forgot my water, so I'll be right back. So I hear a lot of things about it needs to be ice water or cold water. Is that factual?
Not really. It's pretty rare that I actually, honestly, my water is pretty much always room temp, if I'm being honest. Like there's a couple times I've been like, I'll grab ice water, and I think it makes a mild difference. But to me, everything's technique. You can have all the right products, and if you have the wrong technique, you're going to get the wrong result. So yeah, ice water might help you a little bit. Having mirror gloss might help you a little bit. But I would say if you kind of do it this way, you'll get the right result 90% of the times. And sometimes the leather itself doesn't want to be cooperative, whether it's a weird leather or a low quality leather. And that can throw all things off, because I've had plenty of people send me shoes and I do my normal technique and I'm like, why the hell isn't this leather, shining? And it's like, oh, it's kind of mid leather. But now we've got our chamois. Now we've dampened it a little bit. The
I do have a
important thing,
question about. Sorry, I do have a question about the chamois.
yeah,
Does it work best if you always just have a nice clean chamois, or a chamois that you always use of the same color? Does it matter?
yeah, good question. I would say having a clean chamois is good, because sometimes, especially if you wash a chamois, like I washed this one, and I found that if it's a spot that used to have wax on it, even though the wax is gone, the part where that wax was is kind of rough still and pilled. And the softer, the better. The softer without any lint is the best. So to me, that's the most important thing. I would say a chamois you should be in the mindset that it's almost disposable. Um, I genuinely like the Kirby Allison ones, mostly because I helped develop that particular one, because we used to have the high shine chamois, which was like a dress shirt cloth. But then I talked to Kirby and I was like, hey, having like a cotton t-shirt material would be better. And then we found like the most high quality, thickest t-shirt kind of fabric we could. And that's essentially what it is. But you could also easily go to Walmart and get a Hanes t-shirt and cut that up. That would work pretty much equally as well. So we've got our chamois here. It's a little bit damp. And there's an important thing with wax and water, which is a big part of the mirror shine, which is getting the balance of enough water and enough wax, but not too much of either. Because if you have too much water and not enough wax, the water is going to penetrate into the leather and cause spotting, and you can't mirror shine at that point. You have to let your shoe dry overnight and kind of restart. Or if you have too much wax and not enough water, you actually risk having the wax kind of strip off the other layer of wax through friction. So it's kind of a delicate dance, but it's another one of these examples of less is more. If you only have a little bit of wax and a little bit of water, it's easier to kind of course correct if you realize you don't have the ratio correctly. So at this point, now I've only been using the Pat Deluxe wax to apply here. Now what I'm going to do is take a little bit of the mirror gloss. So we're just drag a little bit onto my chamois, a amount you literally can't even see, just a tiny little bit. And then I'm gonna get a tiny little bit more water on my finger and just 2 little drops and start swirling. And
So
hope,
as far as working the wax goes, that really wasn't much time, quote unquote, for working the wax as we've seen. I mean, I'm sure we've all watched videos of people sitting there for 15 minutes working the waxes back and forth. You just hit it for a couple seconds and we can already see what's coming through. So what's your opinion on that? I mean, obviously it doesn't need that much, right?
yeah, so it's all about the base layers, like all that, that 5 to 10 minutes we did applying that base layers with our fingers, working that into the leather with the bare fingers. There's a reason why, if you go back and watch every year they've done the world championship in shoe shining. There's a reason every year the people who won do it this way. And the year I went and didn't win, I did it a different way. So mostly because I didn't know at the time, I was trying to be cool, and I was like, I'm gonna do this different, and I think it's gonna work, which it did not. But there's a reason why all the pros in Japan do it this way, and a lot of the guys who are kind of coming up in the US do it this way. So like you can see, we're already getting to see a bit of shine peek through. And what I do is I kind of go back and forth between the two waxes because they have very different properties. The mirror gloss is very dry, but the Pat Deluxe is a lot softer. And I would say with the water, you want to use as little as possible. Obviously, it's about finding that balance, but having too much, I find, can lead to issues. We're still applying more wax at this point, but this is what I'd call the buffing stage. I'm sorry, that's not the best angle. I'm trying to get it so you can kind of see what's going on back here.
Would you say that using like a rotating tool could help? Like I guess fingers you have more control over the pressure and what you do, as opposed to using like a certain rotating tool that could help you with I guess more friction and more how could you say that, more
I think I get what
buffs.
you mean.
Yeah.
I think I get what you mean. I don't think there's enough nuance to a machine to do that. I think there is for buffing off like cream polish and conditioner, but when it comes to like the mirror shining part, it's not about just pure friction and pure just like motion. Because sometimes you need to go fast, sometimes you need to go slow. But as far as like buffing off creams and stuff, yeah, you could, there's little like drill attachments that it's like a brush and you just, and that, I'm sure that would work fine for that, but not, I don't think it would really work well for mirror shining. But I mean, like you see, we're already, getting the remnants of a mirror shine on the heel.
So, Caleb, we've seen you go back to the different waxes, the Mirror Shine, as well as the Pat Deluxe. When do you know when to go back to reapply?
Yeah, I find that when I'm getting close to the end of the mirror shine, I want to go to the Pat Deluxe because I already have enough layers. But right now, I'm like, I want a little bit more of the smooth wax because I feel like it applies easier. Um, and I'm still kind of trying to build up those layers. I feel like overall, the Pat Deluxe is a better product than the mirror gloss. I feel like it's more towards the end. That dry wax kind of helps with getting that final kind of oomph factor. I don't know if that fully answers your question. It's also just a feel thing, which is not
Are you
a great
feeling
answer.
are you feeling for smoothness? Are you feeling for grip? Are you feeling for what is it you're feeling for when doing it? And I would say like the mirror shine you've already achieved in this couple of minutes is like what I strive for and have yet to even get to. So it's impressive to watch. So I'm just trying to get as many secrets out of this as I can.
Yeah, to me, it all goes back to your base layers. And I know you're doing it with a cloth, but I having done it with a cloth before, it won't get in the same time frame. It won't get the same results. You can get the same results with a cloth. It will take longer. Working the waxes in with your fingers at the beginning and really filling in those pores will make, once you buff it, which we already kind of see a little bit of that mirror shine on the toe and the heel, it'll buff pretty quickly to a high shine. And then it's at this point where we're kind of building that really extreme clarity. So now, and you can also feel it with the smoothness, like it feels more and more glassy, less waxy. Also, you can feel when you have a little bit of friction, but not in a good way. Then you want a little bit of water.
Now, if we're using the chamois and I'm applying the mirror and I go back to the Pat Deluxe, is there any danger in potentially mixing the two?
No, not that I've found, because I go back and forth all the time between the two. I think if anything, they're meant really to kind of be complements to each other. I think you can you can't really use the mirror gloss on its own, in my opinion, but you can definitely use the Pat Deluxe on its own to get a mirror shine.
Shameless plug, the site will soon be carrying a full line of Sapphire product and brushes. The brushes we already have, and the polishes, the mirror gloss, etc., is soon to come.
Very nice.
It's very good news.
Hmm. Okay. So at this point, we have I would call this a high shine, but not a mirror shine. Like you're getting a little bit of reflectiveness off the toe, but it's not super duper clear. But I mean, from the point when we started applying wax to where we are now, it's been I think about 15 minutes total. And this is, light years ahead of where most guys' shoes are going to be. And I think where a lot of guys, they spend a lot of time. So you can keep going from this point, and then it's just about how much clarity do you want? Do you want to see your face in 4K detail, which is fun, but going from this to that, I would say it will take, that additional, 15, 20 minutes of just slowly going back and forth between these different waxes. There's no real difference in technique at that point. It's, to me, going from 0 to this is the hard part, and going from this to that next level is just a time thing. But you can still get really good clarity in about, I would say, let's see how fast it'll take. We'll keep going a little bit, because I can't quite see the details of my face yet, and I think that's where we'll try to get to. Mostly because I now see this as a challenge to myself. But this would also be a perfectly acceptable stopping point where, you're, not trying to spend all your afternoon shining your shoes. You're just trying to get out to work, but you just spent, 10 minutes, and you have a pretty darn high shine on your shoes. Darn good high shine. That's what I meant to say.
When you're doing both of your shoes, would it be better to do one after the other, or apply a bit on one and then apply a bit on the other so they kind of equally meet the shine at the same time?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say apply your base layer to one. So let's say you spend 5 minutes just applying wax with your fingers. Then let it rest, because that time it's sitting is honestly a good thing. You don't have to do it. Obviously, we didn't, and we're doing okay. But then I would apply your base layer to your second shoe, and then let that one dry, and then go back and probably spend 5-10 minutes, applying and buffing with water, and then go back to your other one. And at that point, you would probably be solid for, a good high shine. And then if you wanted to keep going at that point, you could kind of go back and forth. Or that's how I would do it if I was doing a pair.
This is also good as an alternative workout method. My shoulder is burning, and I've got a good I've got a good sweat bead going across the forehead as well.
Yeah, no, I definitely have a fan going if I'm shining shoes, but I don't right now. So I also have the sweat going a little bit. But yeah, it'll definitely help build up the shoulders. It's a part of the Caleb alternative workout regime. I'm gonna start selling a course, mostly because times are tough. You need money.
Caleb, in the event at the end, I'd like for you to provide your, Instagram account, as well as, because you do this as a service as well. So if someone here is not necessarily in the mood to, go through the mirror shine procedure, I think we all are, but in the event that anybody in the future watches this, I'd certainly, when we're about to wrap up, please provide all that information.
Yeah, for sure. Everything is at Caleb Mali, CalebMali. You can find me on Instagram. That's kind of my main thing. Soon to be on YouTube as well. Working on building out the full channel. So that's been fun. Gonna have more shoe shine videos, as well as kind of more style content, and other kind of, I would say, men's interest content. So that'll be fun. Look forward to showing y'all that.
I'm enjoying the fact that, you reapply the wax and it gets cloudy, you start working it in, and all of a sudden it just pops open and you see
Yep.
the shine just come through even cleaner.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's all about those base layers. So when you have those base layers, it makes it pop out so much quicker.
When putting the Pat Deluxe or the mirror gloss, how much pressure are you looking to apply? Are you pressing down, or are you just kind of gently applying the pressure and allowing the movement and the friction to work the waxes together?
No, I'm putting a little bit of pressure. You don't want to put too much, because if you put too much, you can rub it off. But I'm putting a little bit of elbow grease into it, because if you're just letting the cloth kind of drag over, there is a time for that though, and I'll explain that. Let's say hypothetically we're like, hey, I think I'm kind of done now. Like, I would say this is, as good as I'm gonna get in a reasonable time frame. So we've got, pretty solid shine on these. You can almost see what's going on my screen, but not quite. That would take a little bit more time. But this is where I would say the pressure level changes as far as how much pressure you're applying. I'm going to take my chamois off, and I'm going to find a clean spot somewhere I've not applied any wax to. And I'm going to kind of re-put that on. Like that. And then I'm going to get a little bit of water. A little bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to buff with light pressure but fast over the whole shoe. Is just a final buff. Kind of bring out that last little bit of clarity. And at that point, I'm not really applying much pressure, but mostly just kind of trying to get any little micro scratches out. But now we've got a pretty solid eye shine. But there you go. Hopefully that makes sense. Feel free to shoot away any questions now that you have.
Well, on my side, well, previously two, but right now it's one. I am able to reach to the point where you would kind of start to see the reflections, But since you already said, after you start to see reflections on the cap, you have to essentially, if you want more clarity, you have to keep going on. So that was the first one. The second one it is, which time frame do you recommend is to essentially rip the shine, recondition the entire shoe, and essentially hit a reset on it?
Yes. Yes. Let me see. Hold on. I'm gonna see if I can find a pair of one of my own shoes. Because I have a pair right now that is definitely at that point. Where did those go? Okay, there we go. Yeah. No, okay, these are a perfect example. Okay. So these are a pair of my own shoes. These are Alfred Sargent's from England. They're lovely. Um, these, okay, but I don't, it's kind of hard to tell. You see all these little scratches in the wax. So this is prime time for restarting. And what I would do, and also I'm a terrible shoe owner. You see, I don't have shoe trees in these. Ooh. Just kidding. I don't have enough shoe trees for all my shoes. But this is prime time to restart. So what I would do at that point is I have, wait for it, a heat gun. And this is the best way to remove wax. Using Saphir Reno mat is a terrible idea. Don't use it. That's my take. I think it has its place, but to me, it's way too aggressive, and you risk stripping the color of your shoes. I've seen it happen so many times. Here's the thing with the heat gun. You got to be really careful because the goal is to heat up the wax as fast as possible to just, it'll liquefy pretty quickly. You'll see it just, and then you wipe it off. But here's the other issue. Depending on the shoe brand, some shoe brands use leather countering and some use plastic countering. And if you heat up plastic countering, you risk screwing up your shoes. And I learned that the hard way on a pair of shoes, but thankfully I was able to kind of mess them up again to fix them by heating up the countering again to, anyway, but just be cognizant of that. So don't let the heat be too long, just long enough to heat up the wax to wipe it off. And at that point, then you could use a gentle conditioner like a leather cleaning soap or something after you get all the wax off the shoe, because at that point the pores are empty and then you can really kind of deep clean the leather and then kind of start the process over from where we started as far as conditioning the leather. Next thing I would also do is sanding the sole edges. What you want to do with sanding the sole edges is you want to wet sand it. So get a relatively fine grit sandpaper. I think about, the one I use is about 250 grit, and you get it a little bit damp, and then you try to just go one direction with it. The main areas you're going to have to focus on are the toe and your heels, especially this part right here. The rubber part is fine because most dress shoes these days, and I'm pretty sure these do as well, they'll have the quarter rubber, which is pretty standard fare. So you'll see it like on these, like right here, they're pretty chewed up. So hitting that with some sanding is going to make a world of difference. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take, obviously you're not going to have a bottle this big, but you can buy, this is like the mega bottle of it, but the Saphir leather dye. Usually they come in little containers that are like this. And you can buy them for like $12, but you really only need to buy two colors, which is dark brown and black. Because even brown shoes, most of them are dark brown, unless you happen to have, a pair of like light brown ones. But even then, you could probably get away with just using polish at that point. Yeah, I'm trying to think of any other little nifty tricks. Here, to answer your question earlier, Christian, here is the trick. Let's say you need to restart your mirror shine, but you don't have time and you really want to wear these shoes. There's a way to revive this, because right now they look a little bit busted, but overall they're not terrible. So what we can do, we'll just use black polish because why not? I'm gonna just work in some polish over my mirror shine that's a little bit cracked and a little bit dented. So we're just gonna work that in there. And also, here's the thing with black shoe polish, even though this is wax, there's not much pigment in there, so it's not going to make a big difference in the color, especially because we're not working into the pores, we're working the wax on top of other wax. So let's say you're rushing out the door, you're like, crap, I want to get these just a little bit shinier. You're going to work a couple layers of wax in there. And actually, what you can also do, if you're in a bind, is just put a little bit of wax on the sole edge itself. Like so. Just like that. A little bit more wax on. Okay. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my chamois and the water. Actually, I made this too tight, so I can't adjust it. Okay. And now we're just going to buff. Here's the thing, there's a little bit of solvents in the wax. Not much, but a little bit. And those solvents can help kind of almost melt down the previous layer of wax and help smooth it out. Let's say hypothetically you keep going for 5 minutes, they're going to look pretty solid, but I don't feel like going for another 5 minutes on these. But you can actually see that it's kind of hard to see because you're just going to see the smudges, but it's actually smoothed out some of those little cracks that we saw in there earlier. Now it's dulled the shine, but if we keep going for another 5 minutes, you're actually going to be back at a pretty decent shine. So that's a good way to kind of quickly revive when you don't have time to do a full reset. So that's a good trick. And then also, since you don't put, you haven't put any wax right here, just put a little conditioner on your vamp because that's the area that can tend to dry out quicker. So, put your wax here, put a little conditioner here. That's a good, quick kind of hack. When you don't have time to take an hour to strip off your wax, condition, cream polish, and fully rebuild the mirror shine. So
definitely got a decent high shine on mine. Here is one knot, and that's the shined, and you can kind of see the vast difference between the two. So I will certainly keep working on these until we get to a mirror. David, I see you working away on yours as well. How are yours coming along?
It's getting there. It's at a high shine. I don't think I've ever gotten to a point where I got a mirror shine, partially because mostly because it's the time. Um, but as much as like mirror shines are cool, I mean, like even high shines, like you said earlier, are more than what people have on their shoes on a daily basis. So
Exactly. Like
yeah,
I was at work the other day, and most people I interact with at my job walk in and they have horrible shoes on. And there was a guy, and he was wearing just normal, like Allen Edmonds, like Fifth Avenues, and I was like, and he put some like serious shine on those, and I was like, I was impressed, and I like went up to him, and I was like, hey man, like I can tell you did that, and he was like, oh thanks man, and even though like they were just Allen Edmonds, which Allen Edmonds are good and all, but um putting a little work into your shoe shine does make a bit of a difference, I feel like.
And going back to my question earlier, having worked with the pigment, the wax, the mirror shine, applying with my hand, not much difference. There's a little bit there. I'm not even used soap. I just kind of dipped it into the water and used the chamois to wipe it off. So yeah, it kind of comes off pretty clean.
Yeah, like I haven't even washed mine off. Like I have a little bit here, but it's not. If I wash my hands, this will largely be gone. So
Very cool. So I'm going to continue on later when we're done with this to get my second shoe up to par as well. I only did the toe cap. I love doing the heel as well, but I only did the cap today. In regards to shoes that don't necessarily have a cap, let's say we're talking about a loafer or something of a square shape, and that doesn't necessarily have that defining cap. Where would you
sure.
say, how far up the shoe do you go?
Yeah, let me grab a shoe that might be a good example. Um, let's see here. Actually, hold on. Um, Actually, this is another pair of your shoes. Um,
Those are Austins, aren't they?
they are Austin's.
So this was a long wing blucher, and Austin actually went with our Cadiz last on this one. So a higher pitched heel, Cuban heel, and automatically comes with the beveled waist. The beveled waist sole and the toe plates as well. So yeah, that was a fun design. He wanted to go with a soft, contrasted, like spectator almost, and we were able to customize that one up for him.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to tell with this lighting because it almost looks just one tone, but there's definitely a difference between the two. I'm going to make them add a little bit extra contrast, so it'll be a little bit more of a spectator. But with something like this, where you have this long piece, this isn't the best example, but I couldn't find my loafers. You always want to go off the flex point, which you can really easily tell that once you start wearing. And that's kind of the do not cross line. But realistically, if you go up into this line on certain shoes, the part that's mirror shined is proportionally too long. So I would say really it's, the first, it also depends on the proportion of the shoe itself. Because certain shoes have a longer toe cap.
on a wingtip, I would do it to where it's round right here.
Yeah, I mean, like you
Because
can go
I definitely have creases right in there. It's hard to tell, but I tend to
exactly,
shine right about up to here.
exactly. I mean, like if
Yeah.
you can go up here, but like you said, if your creases are through the actual wingtip part itself, you're gonna get cracking there. Same deal with on the sides. Like you can see where this kind of line is. You can kind of keep going up until here. And you can keep applying waxes over here. You just don't want to be trying to mirror shine past this line, and then it's really picking back up in wherever that hard countering is, which you can feel it too. Like on this part, you can feel it's harder, and then you can feel it's really soft right here. And you don't really want to try and mirror shine over a part that's flexing and doesn't have hard countering. And then with a loafer, typically the loafer does not have as much hard countering in the heel, depending on how it's constructed. So really, I think with like a penny loafer, you're really kind of trying to get, especially because you have an apron on there, you're kind of getting that front little circle almost on the toe. And then you might be able to do the heel if it's a more structured loafer, but if not, I would just try and focus on that structured part of the toe. And then kind of same deal for like Chelsea boots and cowboy boots. Because, you know, with cowboy boot like this, you know, same deal. You have that part where it's creasing, and you can very much feel there's that structure here. And kind of same deal with like a Chelsea boot. Even though there's not like an actual kind of, you know, line, you can also kind of, you can feel it and see it. Like that won't really work. So, yeah.
Very good. Any other questions from the gallery?
I've asked all my questions.
I think it was already stuff that I knew, but if there was anything that I didn't know, you already said it. So
Great. Happy to do this. I look forward to doing some other events as well in the near future. Yet to be determined. If you guys have some ideas of, you know, some things you'd like to do or like to see, then please, you know, shoot me messages, let me know. And Caleb, thank you so much for your time and your willingness to help us and guide us through this. I know mirror shine is, you know, a challenge and kind of a sartorial goal. And you know, I know that with my cap toes in particular, I love to get a minimum a high shine on there. I aim for mirror shine. Haven't necessarily achieved it every single time, but you know, at least I get that nice gloss on there. And so I think, you know, being able to replay this back or be able to reach out to you as well with questions would really, really be helpful. And so thank you once again. I mean, you know, your credentials speak for themselves. The proof of your work is there. And I personally can't thank you enough for this.
Yeah, absolutely. And if any of you have any questions later, like if you're working on your shoes, and you come across something and you're kind of like, I don't know what to do with that, feel free to shoot me a message on Instagram, and I'll send you a video, or I'll send you an audio message kind of describing how to fix it. Or if you just want your shoes worked on, feel free to shoot me a DM, and I'm happy to work on them.
Awesome. Thank you so much. With that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. I will edit this up. I'll let everybody get a peek at it before I publish anything. That way, if you want me to edit anything out or whatnot, just let me know. And again, thank you all for hopping on and joining from around our hemisphere. I really appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. Have a great evening, everyone. Take care.
It was a great event. Thanks, everyone.
bye. Thank you.
Take care.
Peace.